And this is when Tom and the community stepped in. When we first recognized the importance of it, there was nothing east at all. There was just some farms and pasture land out there, as you know, okay? And then all of a sudden the developments came, and the people in the community began to recreate at the celery fields. And so, anyway, so you stepped in, your community stepped in and said, hey, what's going on? Especially when the county put those 4 parcels up for sale. And so I have to thank you. Really, you really stepped up to the plate. We really didn't know, we were exhausted from raising $1.4 million and achieving this massive goal. We really felt we couldn't do anything else. It was just, we'd exhausted, the board was exhausted. And so you guys stepped up, and well, the rest is history. I just want to say it was a tremendous effort on the part of the community. You really were amazing. And Fresh Start spearheaded the community effort with community activists, and you got us to the finish line. And Christine and I were able to just push it over. And that's what happened this week. But it couldn't have happened without, you all helped, we helped, and we got there. And it was just an amazing thing. It was very difficult and very frustrating at times for all of us, especially the county commission. First of all, they weren't interested. They were busy going through their financial stuff and wanted to sell it and all of that. So here we are. Phase 1 is over. So now we're entering phase 2, and that's Christine's job. You're in phase 2. The Conservation Foundation are experts at conservation easements. We are not. We will help in any way that we can, but Christine and her group, we're going to have to deal with all of those, 6 departments, was it? Anyway, it's a huge task, I know, but I know they can do it. So phase 3 is really where the rubber hits the road. And that's when now we have to start getting the funds. And we at Audubon, our members, the Conservation Foundation members, and the community, and all of the homeowners out there, we really are expecting you guys to help us reach the goal, the financial goals, which are going to be considerable. I hope that your avid engagement will transfer into helping with donations. And the other way that you can help is when the restoration, when we're into phase 4, which is actually doing the restoration after phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, that you will be able to contribute labor. When we will have volunteers, we will have work crews out there planting trees, planting shrubs, and all of that stuff. And we hope that you can help us with that as well. So, you have a question?
I will have a question first.
Yeah, okay. Sarasota Audubon is setting up a fund called the SAS Quad Fund, and it's at sarasotaAudubon.org. And let's get this thing done so that as soon as the conservation easement is in place, we'll be ready to start planting for the birds. It's for the birds. In my opinion, it's primarily for the birds, to protect that habitat and to protect that environment. Secondarily, it's for everybody, for low-impact recreation, for us, for all of us, to enjoy it. You don't have to be a bird lover to enjoy the celery fields. Most of the people who go there are not birders, but it's just a wonderful place to be. You know, John Ryan always says, oh, Jeanne, you say it's going to be the Central Park of Sarasota. And it is, it really is. Look at all the urban development around, and it's just such a haven there. So, that's all I really have to say right now. Is that help us, help us, help us. Yes, sir.
Two questions.
Wait a minute, I want to get that on tape.
And as I'm walking over there, I'll let you know that CONA and Jeanne have been talking, and Christine is going to be coming to CONA on a regular basis in our announcement period to keep you all up to date.
Okay.
I can also say that we will also post proceedings at the Celery Fields Nature Center, so people can come in and we'll have it on a board there. Just follow the progress, yes.
Okay. You're saying that all the capital costs for improvement are getting borne by this fundraising, by...
Yes?
So the county is not going to have any skin in this game?
No, they're not.
The county has skin in the game by giving up all of their future rights to the property.
Okay. But you're still confirming what I'm saying, that all the improvement of the site and the planning is the costs are going to be borne by...
No, the county staff is doing the planning. Yeah.
Okay. But the capital costs?
Yes, the actual restoration process will be, we'll need to raise the funds to do that, and for maintenance in the future as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Hold on, let me get around there.
I'm right here.
Hi, I applaud all of your work. Ms. Johnson used the term develop the property several times. So when you take a property such as Bobby Jones, what's the range of things that you might develop it into? Might it include a soccer field? Might it include a garden? Does it necessarily mean native vegetation? Where do you stand on paved paths versus dirt paths?
Are you talking Bobby Jones or are you talking celery?
In general, but
in general,
for example, celery.
Yeah.
No, for example, Bobby Jones.
Well,
Why don't we stick to just the Celery Fields tonight?
okay.
No, because I asked about Bobby Jones, that's why.
Yeah, but we've got a long program tonight. I don't want to take the time up with it. We'll bring the Bobby Jones
Shouldn't take
thing
more than a
here
sentence.
differently.
So with
there's another-
Celery Fields specifically, it will be passive recreation. The definition of passive recreation is not detrimental to the land. So think if it is a path, a portion of it might be because of ADA requirements cause it to be paved, but necessarily all of it. And that's probably about it for Celery Fields.
So more generally, if I may, when you do a conservation, could it include a soccer field or a garden with exotic plants?
It's all negotiated.
Okay, another question, several questions here.
You keep mentioning that you're able to get 3 of the 4 parcels. Where exactly is the 4th parcel, and what will happen to that? Is that up for potentially being saved eventually?
That is the 4th parcel. There is a temporary fire station on that now, and the plan has always been to build a permanent fire station on there. So that was sort of off limits. However, we will say that some of that, a large part of that particular area is actually available, or the fire station will only be on one small portion of it. So we are hoping to work with the county to make that compatible. It won't be part of this conservation easement, it's not even part of this project, but we will certainly be in on it, trying to make sure that they don't build whatever on it.
Well, that's up to us as citizens to make sure that happens.
Yes, just from the county commission discussion the other day, I was concerned, I believe it was Commissioner Mayo kept talking about the money that the county was losing. I just want to remind everybody that this land and the development of it to this point was paid for by special assessments paid by property owners within the Philippi Creek Basin. So to me, that's very different from a situation where the county is giving up something that the general taxpayers paid for. This is a more discrete funding source, and it was paid for specifically by property owners in that stormwater basin. And I know the bond's been paid off, but I think the flavor of that should still.
No, you're
be
absolutely
kept in
right.
mind.
And it was the county commissioners that were saying that if they were ever to sell these properties, which because they were acquired not for stormwater, they were acquired because the owner didn't want to sell. Yeah.
It was a package deal.
However, it was stormwater funds that purchased it. You're absolutely correct. So if they were ever sold, those monies would have to go back into stormwater. And the county commissioners were informing us there's a lot of stormwater needs in this county, and that's what they were looking for.
And I also would like to stress the fact that the county doesn't own the land, it's public land. And we are the citizens, and we'll be the ones that'll be using that land. There's no loss.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. The government, the county is we the people. We are the county. We own that land. But my question is, how, in this planning phase, how do we the people get involved in that?
I don't think there really is a role in the planning phase because what's going to go there is restoration. So it's not a park, it's a preserve.
I have a question about the celery fields themselves. And in the state of Florida, are there other celery fields? Do we have something very unique? Are there something similar? We talk about ecotourism, and is this something that really is...
The history, it's called the Celery Fields because it was celery farming there from the 1920s until the 1990s. And prior to that, before it was developed in the 20s, it was a sawgrass marsh. It was actually a swamp area. And the celery that was produced was shipped all over the country at one point. But it wasn't owned, the celery fields were not owned by one celery farm. It was a lot of different celery farmers. And ultimately, during the 70s and the 80s, because of environmental regulations, the celery farmers began to sell off their property because they didn't want to deal with all of those particular regulations. So there are other celery growing areas, I believe, up in the central part of the state. I'm not really sure, but the celery farming has really gone out of Florida.
But what it is now with the Audubon and the visitor center and what it represents now as far as recreation, is there anything similar to what we have?
Yes, well, I always say it's a twofold purpose. It's a public utility, safety, so it saves homes from being flooded downstream, plus it's a recreational area, so it's twofold. And there are other counties that have their sewage treatment plants, for example, have boardwalks all the way through because birds love them. You go to West Palm Beach County, there are a couple of fantastic areas there which are public utilities, but they've adapted them and put boardwalks and people run and jog and all of that. Yes.
I got something over here.
Hi, I'm John Ryan. I'm a manager with Sarasota County Stormwater. And there are places like the Celery Fields, sorry, it's his question. But the Celery Fields is a special place. And it is, in the world of stormwater management, we often build square stormwater ponds. That's kind of a normal thing. They're pretty ugly. The Celery Fields is really different because of the foresight of people who designed it. So it has tremendous value. And in fact, the head of DEP, who's Noah Valenstein, when he comes to the Florida Stormwater Association conferences, he talks about it as the example for stormwater management in Florida. And it's not because it takes its houses out of the floodplain. It has to do that. But it has all these other benefits. And instead of spending, we spend millions and millions of dollars as an industry and as a county preventing flooding. But this is so much more than that. And you all know that. And in fact, I suspect it pays back more in recreational value and birding value than it does as a stormwater facility. And one thing is it never gets used up. So some of you may have lived in, I used to live in a place where mining was popular. Mining eventually ends, it's used up. Birding never ends, it pays forever. So there's always that payback. That's a fantastic investment. So that kind of really smart thinking is the example. Celery Fields is the example that others aspire to. And it does happen, but it's a good example.
Where was the other question? Okay, hold on.
Okay. First of all, I think this is such a wonderful example of people power, and I was shocked that you guys got this from the county commission. I've not been following it, but I'm just totally amazed that this happened. It's a turning point, I hope. And I have a very dumb question because I haven't been following it. I understood the mountain part was all made of toxic waste and toxic material. So what happened? What is that true? Or explain to me what the mountain is actually made of.
What the mound is, one of the first questions that people ask when they come into the nature center is that landfill? And we say, no, it isn't landfill. What it is, it's as the county purchased the 300 acres and they had to dig out ponds in order to accommodate capacity for when there was a lot of flooding. And so they didn't know what to do with the soil, so they put it up on the hill. And there are a certain amount of contaminants in it, and they couldn't sell it to anybody for other reasons, and so they just kept it on the hill. The hill went higher and higher and higher as they were digging and digging, and then they actually capped it by putting good soil, and also underneath that good soil they had a layer of some, I don't know, plastic.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Jane,
Yeah.
if you can make sure you use the microphone closely.
Okay. So, do you want me to say it again? No. Okay.
It's very encouraging. Since my background is in city planning, and I pay attention to comprehensive plans, and zoning, consistency, the question here, was there an amendment to the comprehensive plan to recognize the Celery Fields as a something? I don't know what. And the same issue will be with these three with the quad sites, that there'll be a comprehensive plan amendment and appropriate zoning to show that the intention of the local government to preserve these properties.
I'll speak to the second part of your question first, and maybe somebody else more knowledgeable on the Celery Fields zoning can, but I think the Celery Fields is public use, is what it is zoned, but I'm not sure. The beauty of this conservation easement idea and vision is that it doesn't matter what it's zoned. The conservation easement takes precedent. It can be zoned high intensity. You still can't use it for high intensity because of the conservation easement, which is why the commissioners loved the idea, because they don't have to go through another zoning process for these properties.
That's very lazy on that part.
Actually, it's not. It's not lazy at all, because it's a lot of work and it is perpetual, whereas a zoning and a comp plan, as we know, can be changed again.
And again.
Yeah.
And again.
I'm going to wrap this right now, and we're going to go to Tom Matrullo. And I want to thank you so much for your presentation. And I promise that when Christine has something to update, she'll be here. And we'll have a link on our website. For this meeting, we'll have a couple of different links on the resources page, so watch for it. The Audubon Society has always been on one of our resource pages. We're going to have a little bit of a transition here.
While they're doing the transition, can I ask a question about that? Are either or both organizations associated with the Giving Challenge? Both.
We're on Charity Navigator as well, and we have the highest rating.
Okay, this is Tom Latrullo coming back, and we're going to have Adrian Lucas and Glenna Bloomquist.
Thank you. Is Christine still here?
I'm right here.
You have to run. Okay, I'll leave you with the question. You can answer it later.
Okay.
You mentioned that one of the things that you're going to have to craft, working with the county, is permissions and things that are excluded from using. And I just wondered, does the community get to have any say in that or any involvement, or is that between the foundation or whoever?
It is between the foundation and the county, but if anybody has any experience with land,
It is between the county and conservation easement, since, a conservation foundation, since we're the ones who have to enforce it. But if anybody has any experience in land use law and wants to give us some input, we're more than happy to take it. The other question I wanted to follow up with about public involvement in the planning. Again, though, if anybody has experience in native plants, landscaping, water engineers, all that, we will definitely take all of that expertise in the designing plan, but we really are looking for that expertise in that plan.
Thank you.
I have information up here too on our organization, if anybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While we're getting the little PowerPoint going, I'm going to say a few things. Adrian is going to say a few things. Glenn is going to say a few things. It won't take long. We're going to hopefully have a chance to hear from you, and if you have any questions of us, happy to talk to you. So, just so everybody understands what happened, because I'm not sure we were all perfectly clear. These are the 4 quad parcels. Maybe we could hit one of those lights over there. Can you see this?
Yeah.
There we go. Northeast, southeast, southwest. Those are the 3 that are going to be under the easement. And here's the northwest quad, which is the one with the fire station. It still has 4.5 or 4.1 developable acres. It is unclear to us why, when the county was being so gracious as to give us the 3 parcels, it just didn't throw in the 4th. And when I asked the planner about that, what he told us is that they have not requested or authorized any rezoning of any of these parcels. Our efforts, he said, will be concentrated on developing the conservation easements as directed by the board. But still, we're going to watch that 4th parcel very carefully. And I was encouraged when Jeanne said that they hope to work together with the county to do something that at least would be compatible. And there are possible compatibilities, so we'll see. Anyway, what do I have to do to advance this?
Just the right arrow key will do it.
Right arrow key, okay. So these are the exact recommendations that the county planners made to the board, in which the board authorized. So everything you see here is what is going to happen. They have been ordered to do this. And I won't go through the whole thing, but we're happy to see things like provide minimum open space and architectural design standards, restrict inappropriate uses, obviously. Things that came up through the Fresh Start community, where people were saying, hey, we could do this, we could do that. They're going to actually be implementing some of them in this planning process. So we're thrilled about that. One of the questions that I think we will want to ask on the larger context here is whether with all this commitment, can you turn that light off?
It makes a difference for the video. You don't show in the video with the light out.
Oh, you don't.
And it's showing up. I just checked.
Okay. This is a photo of the Audubon people working, volunteer one Saturday morning recently right in their garden next to the Mount Celery, or whatever, Mount Celery, I like Mount, okay. So they're all working there. It's a sign of the ongoing commitment of the community to this place. I think that's what kind of won the day. The fact that it wasn't just a few people, it was an entire spectrum of the community that saw the value, that saw the importance of this. And now it's returning in value because the real estate values all around there are going up insanely. In the past year, some of the parcels in the Fruitful Initiative have doubled in value from like 3.1 million to 8 million, things like that. Because they're going to be putting apartments in there, and people who live in those apartments like walking to the celery fields. So the more we see this area, it's organically changing, evolving into something that we had tried to tell the county about 3 years ago, but at least they're finally getting the picture. Is it a turning point in the larger picture of county planning? That's what we don't know. 1996, a group called the Multi-Stakeholder Group devised a whole series of principles looking forward and saying, let's watch out because development's going to come to East County. If we're not careful, it could go bad. They generated the seeds of the comp plan. Steve Swa, who was mentioned earlier, was one of the people in that group. Wade, were you in that group? I thought I remembered your name.
With Ottoman.
Yeah. Anyone else in this?
Is my replacement.
Yeah.
For 2 years now.
Yes.
2 years ago.
Rob's been with us all along, solid. But is there anybody else in this group? Sue, you were in this.
I wasn't part of the group, but I was in the county attorney's office.
Well, okay, your name's on some pages in there. It's a phenomenal act of foresight by a community to try to protect the East County years in advance. 1996, they were saying this, okay? I like the part where it says, taking into account adverse impacts on natural systems. They saw this coming, okay? So anyway, they laid out some principles. We're not going to go through all this now, but it's a beautiful document. It's called the Multi-Stakeholder Group Report, and it's prescient. It's like they saw what was coming. Now, what has happened? The pendulum in the county went all the way over to the other side. Instead of people worrying about what's going to happen, they're trying to figure out how to grab as much of it as possible in East County and monetize it, sell it, and then move on to, another county. That's where the pendulum went from one end to the other. The question is, can this be a moment of a turning point where we start moving back, where we can develop some kind of interaction between the board, the county structure, the developers, and the community? It's not going to be easy, I'll tell you that. But Paul Mercier showed up at a meeting not long ago, former Commissioner Mr. Mercier. He told the board